This is Theory of Change. I'm Matthew Sheffield. Thanks for being here today. Before we get into today's program, I just wanted to remind everybody that Theory of Change is part of the Flux Media network. So go to flux.community for more articles and podcasts about politics, media, religion, and technology. And you can also go to theoryofchange.show to get direct access to the podcast within Flux. And if you like what we're doing, we got paid subscriptions on Substack or Patreon. And so I do appreciate everybody who is subscribing in that way. But you can also do a free subscription as well. And please do share the episodes with your friends and family. Let people know what we're doing here. I really do appreciate that. Thanks very much. Okay, so with that little plug out of the way, let us get into today's program. Sex workers, people who earn a living as escorts or adult entertainers, are some of the most visible people in media nowadays. According to the web traffic stats company SimilarWeb, 3 of the top 15 websites in the world are pornographic video services. And yet, despite how popular porn has become, a lot of us don't know too much about the people who work in the industry. And that's a shame because a lot of them have very interesting stories to tell and are interesting people themselves. And one person who is kind of breaking the mold in that regard is the guest that we're going to be talking with on today's show. Her name is Tasha Reign, and she has just published a new book called From Princess to Porn Star, a Real-Life Cinderella Story. So it's great to have you here, Tasha. Welcome to Theory of Change.
Hi. Thanks so much for having me.
All right. Well, so your book has so many different stories here. I have to say you've definitely led a very interesting life. And really kind of from the beginning, a lot of people who have some kind of, celebrity background, they're like, yeah, I just had a regular, boring childhood, normal. And then somehow I got famous one way or the other. And in your case, you start off the interesting stuff right from the beginning, almost, kind of. So I guess maybe you were in one of the earliest reality television shows. Let's maybe start there. How about that?
Yes, I was. When I was in high school, I was picked to do the Laguna Beach show, season 3, the one that nobody watched. But it was really interesting to be on reality TV in high school. And in the book, I go into the nuances of that, but it was an experience that bonded me with my friends that I still have today. Like, all the friends that I have today are the friends I had from preschool. It's pretty crazy. And I do think that the show has something to do with some of those friendships lasting, because it was just such a bond that was unique to any other friendship I've had, because it's like we're coworkers, but we're also friends. And it definitely
it's a very
opened
unique shared experience too, like
a unique shared experience. But when I bring it up, believe it or not, I talked to some of my girlfriends, like Cammie, who was on the show, and when it gets brought up, she says she doesn't remember. What do you mean? It wasn't that, it was long ago. She's like, I think I have PTSD from the show. I'm like, oh my gosh, maybe. Okay. Because I think that it did not necessarily showcase the best light, especially on the people that were the focus of the show, like the main characters. That's one reason. And another reason is it was a long time ago. And it might have been a little like blurry for some people. I don't know. Anyway, I thought that was funny that she doesn't remember it.
Yeah. Well, what was so for people who never saw it, that show at all or never heard of it?
Oh, everyone saw Laguna Beach.
Well, I see, but
statistically, I literally think everybody watched it. But if you're not an elderly millennial,
we got Gen Z, and millennial.
If you're not an elderly millennial, then Laguna Beach, the Real OC, was a reality-based / scripted, the first of its kind, a reality drama show. And it was a show that followed high schoolers around, as creepy as that sounds when I say it, like 16, 17-year-old girls and boys. and they would follow us in our social world on film, at parties, at restaurants, and it was like partially curated to a degree. So they would say something like, "What are you up to this weekend?" And you'd be like, "Oh, I'm going to Charlie's party." And they'd be like, "Okay, we'll show up at 6 p.m. Can I have Charlie's contact info to get permission to shoot?" So these parents would give these camera operators, directors, producers from MTV the permission to shoot in their home while we got wasted. And you can see us getting drunk with like a red cup in hand, red Solo cup, which is fucking wild. And so they would shoot us at parties, or they'd be like, "Oh, can you guys like do something this weekend?" And we'd be like, "Okay, we're going to go to this restaurant." And they'd be like, "Okay." And they would like pull the permits for the restaurant, get there, and they would shoot us eating. And then they would sit there and be like, "Oh, okay, talk amongst yourselves." And then they would interject and be like, "Oh, can you talk about Kellen? Oh, can you talk about the drama with Derek?" And you'd be like, "Oh, okay." And then you would improv it, but it was real, but also improv and kind of manipulated at the same time. It was a strange scenario to be in as somebody that's never acted before, but it was fun, and I definitely want to leave the experience like on a good note. Although I talk about how now I don't find it to be a very like ethical thing that they were doing. I don't have like some horrible traumatizing memory from it. I just kind of feel like, gosh, I wouldn't let my own child do that.
Yeah. Well, and you
now that I'm a mom.
Yeah. Well, and you noted that they they seem to want to show people more when they engaged in kind of catty behavior or nastiness.
The whole show is based on drama. So that is what fuels the show. The show is based on things that are sensationalized, things that are extreme, bad, entertaining. And so as a cast member, when you're like 16 years old, you're encouraged without them saying it to behave in behavior that you think the viewer might want to watch most. And based on the first and the second season, we're, motivated and kind of like driven by that behavior, which was bad and inappropriate. So it's a strange concept.
Yeah. Oh, and they also didn't really pay people very well, as I understand.
We were not paid very well at all. Like, I don't know what other seasons were paid. I would assume it had the same like lining as the third season, but for the same rates. But honestly, I'm not sure. I just know my own season and my own rate and my coworkers' rates, and we were just paid almost nothing. It was like a few $1,000 for the whole season. And no residuals. But honestly, the income part is really like that actually is triggering, because they should have paid more to us. And at least I wasn't a main character, because the main characters were paid, to my knowledge, the same amount, because we signed those contracts before and we didn't find out who the main character was till the very end.
Yeah. Although, to be honest,
everybody got the same.
Yeah, although like that part I actually kind of liked, that when you mentioned they did that
Why?
People didn't know if they were the main character. No, not with the money.
Why?
I'm saying,
why do you like that?
Because it made it so that nobody knew if you were the main character or not, and so it basically, I don't know, I gave it a little bit more authenticity in terms of the cast member relationships with each other.
No, I think people caught on because you would have more filming engagements and more like days
the main character
to shoot. Yeah, of course. And on top of that, the narrative during those filming experiences would be focused upon the main character and their drama. They did confuse us because sometimes they would shoot us in a way where somebody who was not the main character thought they were the main character. But I think it was a real mindfuck. And honestly, nobody should be shooting underage. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, that's definitely
it's a whole other issue. It's crazy.
Sure.
Crazy.
Yeah. Okay. Well, okay, so but all that experience at least gave you some familiarity with the idea of being filmed on camera, and and being in media, and I'm sure like people recognized you after that who didn't know you, right? So I guess in some way, like it did kind of maybe prepare you for the life that you later engaged in to some degree, right? Okay.
To some degree, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right. So after that, and after high school, and you have another interesting story in there that your parents didn't tell you that you were the child of a sperm donor, that your father, who you had raised you, they didn't even tell you until you were an adult that he was not your actual father.
I cannot believe it. When you say it, I'm like, what? How did that happen?
Yeah. No, and I guess like you were maybe somewhat one of the earliest ones out there, the test tube babies.
Absolutely. I was one of the first batches. It was like the first couple of years it was ever even done.
Yeah. But now it's super common now, and
it's super common.
But yeah, hopefully people, but I guess and you talk about that in the book, that, once you did learn that as an adult, that it was kind of a real weird thing to have to back your way out of and into at the same time. I can only imagine how that must have felt.
I mean, I think I'm still processing it, because it's just so incredibly bizarre. It's strange, and it also comes up in ways that I wouldn't necessarily expect it to, or hadn't before I knew. Like, for instance, I have siblings that are half siblings from my actual father, but they're not the sperm donor siblings. They're actual, like, siblings I grew up thinking were my blood, are not my half siblings. They're not, because I'm not blood related to my deceased father. And so, although we still have our relationships, sometimes I'll find myself thinking like, oh, well, maybe we're not very close anymore because we're not really blood related. So it's just kind of like not ideal. I almost like, there's no way to hide it. I think initially they never wanted me to find out, but with the DNA testing and Ancestry, DNA.com, and all of these websites where you can just go get your DNA tested, you can never keep it a secret. It's out. So I think it's about, I guess, talking to your kids. Like, if you engage in that, you need to have a sit down conversation with them, and maybe have a therapist involved, and really like explain to them what happened and why. And it just needs to be like, done in a loving way, especially now that it's so common.
Yeah, well, at least it didn't affect your childhood. Like, you found out about it as an adult. I think that's
an interesting way to look at it. Yeah.
Because, like, yeah, it might have come between you and your parents, had you known when you were younger.
It might have.
Who knows?
Yeah. Who knows how it did affect my childhood? I don't know.
Yeah. True. Well, all right. So you after you finished high school in Southern California, Laguna Beach, you then started thinking about college, and you applied to a few and didn't get into the ones that you wanted. And then, so it was Santa Monica Community College, I believe you said. Okay, yeah, I'm trying to remember that. And you at around that time, I guess that was around when you started getting into escorting. What made you decide to get into that, or how'd you?
So I got into escorting. It was so long ago. I was 19 years old maybe, and I was actually just looking for a modeling job online on Craigslist like a weirdo, and a Playboy modeling job. That's what I wanted to do. And I saw this ad, and the woman looked like a Playboy model. She probably was one. She was really pretty, and it said Playboy modeling gig. I thought it was one, and I responded. I then met this lady in Beverly Hills in like her white Mercedes Benz. And she was like telling me about the job, about meeting a guy, meeting men at this beautiful house in Beverly Hills. And I was like, oh, so like, do I have to have sex with these people? And she's like, no, not always, or not really. I don't know. She said something that evaded the question, where in the book I'm like, was it like because she was trying to trick me, or like she thought I was a cop? I don't know. But anyway, I remember my first booking, and it was with a man in like Marina Del Rey. And it was a weird experience because I had braces, so I just like looked so young. And he was just honestly like, I was not interested at all. And I was just there for the job. And it was a scary experience because it's like stranger danger, something I had not engaged in, maybe like a little bit thrilling though too. And afterwards, I was like, well, that was easy, even though it honestly wasn't easy. But I think in my mind, I was like, well, it's like a lot of money, and I have sex anyway casually, so why not? And yeah, it gave me a sense of independence for sure, but I did not like it. And so I stopped doing it. I was just like, this is not something that I'm enjoying. So stopped doing that. And then I actually was taking like strip aerobics classes and started dancing at a club called Silver Rain in Los Angeles. And up until recently, unless I'm missing the billboard, they had like this huge billboard of my photo that I had gave them if they put my website at the bottom of it. And it was advertising their club, Silver Rain. And I would get texts like every week, do you own Silver Rain? I don't own Silver Rain. I don't even dance there.
But that was where you decided to take your porn name.
That is where I took my porn name from, because I thought it was a cool name. So, but yeah, so I got into the adult business kind of through an interesting path. And then I met somebody at a gentleman's club, Foreplay, in West Hollywood, who took me up to the Playboy Mansion, and that just kind of turned into my adult career.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And I guess, yeah, you do talk about that whole Playboy experience quite a bit.
I know, quite a bit.
Yeah, and it's interesting to think about, and but I guess in the context that you do, like this is a theme throughout the book, is that this whole Madonna whore distinction. Tell us, for people who haven't heard that term, like what does that mean, and what's and it's something that is kind of really not just involved with sex work, but also just women in general.
Women in general. Yes. Yeah. I feel like there is a stigma with women where the patriarchy will often paint them in a light that is either a like Madonna or a whore, or a good girl or a bad girl, or a virgin or a whore, or just one or the other. Like, you cannot coexist. You cannot, just be a sex worker. Yeah, and just be a human. Just be a complex woman. And I actually and I talked about it in the book. I think that is beginning to change. So I don't feel like it focused on how that is today, end all be all. I think, I spoke a lot about how, stereotypes and stigmas have started to lift due to OnlyFans and normalization of sex work, which I think is really on the rise to a point where I'm constantly surprised. I have conversations with friends that are not an adult, and they say things where I'm like, what did you just say? Like, I was at a mom's group hangout drink thing the other night in a neighborhood near where I live, with a bunch of 50-year-old women, 30, 50-year-old women, and they all have kids and they're all moms, and they were using the word Pornhub as kind of a noun or an adjective, oh, that's I should put this on Pornhub and make some money off of it. And I was like, what? Saying stuff like that. Or I'll have a girlfriend. I was at another mommy and me class, and she was like, so how much are you making on OnlyFans? And I was like, why are you asking? So I feel like there's just a lot of conversation that's being had that's positive and just different than it was when I got into adult, which was like over a decade ago, where things were different. And I definitely felt like this pressure of, if I do porn, then, I will always be just seen as this porn star. And I don't feel like that anymore. And I think it's really important takeaway.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and we'll get into that a little bit more later in the interview. But in terms of, I mean, even the Madonna whore, discrimination existed in that in the Playboy Mansion, and in the world of Hugh Hefner. And you talk about that, like that for him, he didn't want women to be involved in his social circle or in his media content if he knew that they were stripping or that they were escorting.
That's true. Yeah, you can't be a playmate. That's true.
Hardcore porn.
Yes.
And like it's so
long ago, but that is true.
Yeah, but I mean it's such a weird thing to think about in retrospect that here's a guy.
It's not though.
Well, tell me.
Weird.
Yeah, no, I mean it's inconsistent, but you can see where his logic in his own brain, how it worked for him.
I can.
But tell me,
works.
In what way do you think it worked for him, though?
In the same way that everybody's own logic works. It's like they view certain things in a certain way, and then anything outside of, their viewpoint to them is not appropriate or not in line. It's not just to somebody that's not in sex work or not in the Playboy world. It's easy to paint like a broad brush and be like, oh, sex work. But I think a lot of people have certain feelings that they have about the aesthetic of what they're viewing and how that is very different than, hardcore pornography. Somebody might see a soft picture of a nude woman as art, and then one where she's not looking as soft, and that is different. It's art is subjective, so I can totally understand it. I don't not get it. I get it.
Yeah,
but I do.
Yeah. Well, there's a phrase for people who study sex work as an academic discipline that it's kind of a joking but not quite a joke phrase. They call it the horrorarchy. That of people who
funny. I've never
do
heard
sex
that.
Work. In the sense that like people who don't, like people who are at the very bottom tend to be people who are escorts and transgender, and are looked down on and not seen as worthy of protection. And
that is true. I mean, when I took my hierarchy of sex work class, the teacher said that if you're a waitress, then you're a sex worker. If you're a bartender, then you're a sex worker. So I feel like people have just different ideas of the totem pole of sex work, or what actually constitutes sex work.
Yeah. Well, talk about that a little bit more if you could.
Well, I think that it's so complicated, or it's kind of so many layers to it. But I mean, any job where you're using your sexuality in some capacity could be considered sex work. So I always think of a bartender as a sex worker, but I don't think people outside of sex work might think that.
They can't perceive it as such.
They don't perceive it as that. But I would never, if somebody was like, I'm a bartender, I'm like, oh, you're a sex worker.
Yeah.
Duh.
Well, yeah.
Because you're literally what can I get you?
Well, and it's an interesting observation because if you look at it, sometimes some of the reporting that I've done over the years involves looking at incel, men who are just
kill them all.
horrible people, but they for them, they also see service work like barista
as
or bartender as sex work, but they don't
too. And I'm not an incel.
Yeah, but no, for them, but they don't understand it as that that this is a business transaction that the woman's engaging with.
Well,
Like,
no, I think
in
they
other words,
do understand
they
it,
can
but that
see.
they make it slowly.
Well, yeah, but it's also that like they think, some of them think that this woman at the bar smiled at me and she looked me in the eye, and so therefore she likes
Yeah,
me.
well, they're not necessarily thinking it. Do they think it's work then? Because
No, they see
that's
the
not a,
output. In other words, they can see the output, like the sexuality in the output a little
they
bit.
see the whore. They don't necessarily see
They
that
don't
it's,
see the work though.
or they see the slut. They don't see the whore. Right? Like they see that it's a sexy woman that to them is actually exuding likability towards them, but they don't see that it's a craft and a job with respect. They
Yeah,
don't see
they
that.
don't see that.
I don't think it's sex work that they see. I think they see that the woman is
They see the
sexualized.
output of it, but they don't see
Yeah,
why it's happening. Is what
for
I'm
money.
saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
so,
interesting. That's a scary parallel that we, that Intel and I have.
well, see, but that is one of the reasons that I was interested in talking to you, because like your book does, like it's. I mean, I don't know how. I don't think I've ever read any of these memoirs of a porn star before, but like I have, when I was like when
Love the
our
candor,
mutual.
Matt.
when our one of our mutual friends introduced us, I was like, oh, she's got a master's degree in journalism. I bet this book's actually going to be interesting, and it was. It was interesting.
Oh, good. I'm so happy you enjoyed it. I really wanted it to be entertaining.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so you you got into to doing adult films after being in the Playboy orbit for a while, and and I guess Hefner, you write about how once he found out what you were doing, he expelled you from the mansion. Talk about that experience a little bit, if you could, please.
So I had asked Hef to become a playmate after being a Playboy model. And he tested me, which is the criteria before becoming a playmate, down at Playboy Studios. And I did not pass the test. I was not given the title of playmate. I was just asked to be like a Playboy cyber girl online. And I was devastated, like brokenheartedly devastated, floridly sad, angry, upset, life over. And so I was like, well, what's next? I am just going to go sign a contract and become a porn star. That is what I'm going to do, because I felt like after reading Jenna Jameson's book, How to Make Love Like a Porn Star, like I needed control. And she seemed to have a lot of control over her career. And so I figured out a way to get into hardcore adult entertainment, and the women up at the mansion knew that I was doing porn, probably because I told them. They were my friends. And it got back to Hugh Hefner's wife at the time, who's now a widow to him, Crystal Hefner. And she told him to write me letters to dismiss me from being a weekend girl on Friday, Saturday, Sundays, and to blacklist me and to tell me that I wasn't allowed to do porn if I was going to even be a Playboy model. And it was devastating. It was like a heartbreaking thing for me because I loved Playboy so much. And I understood, like, in retrospect, it's not that I don't understand why he did that. It was just, for me, a horrible experience, because that was like my whole world up at the Playboy Mansion. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and I guess, since that happened, that experience, you kind of, have kind of rethought the experience somewhat and realized that while it was both an opportunity for you, it was also, not quite that as well, that there were some more unsavory aspects of that experience.
Lots
right?
of unsavory aspects of the whole book. A lot of unsavory things.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think one of the things that's important for you in telling your story is that, I think a lot of people have because they don't know people in the adult entertainment industry, or at least not that they know of, right? That that they think that especially women who get into stripping or escorting or porn, that you guys don't do it because you don't choose it. You do it because there's something wrong with you. And that's, it's just not true for a lot of people who get into adult film, that it's something that they're interested in. And you talk about that in the book, that it was something that you were like, no, this is something I want to do. And this is something that I'm passionate about. And, I think it's helpful in getting people to understand that, there's nothing wrong with somebody choosing to do that if that's what they want to do.
Yeah.
Oh, you have any more response than that, or did I say it perfectly?
You are perfectly eloquent.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, so after you started doing, or early on in your career, so you started it when you were 21, and you were going to college at the same time. And I guess early on in your career, you became a political figure for 15 minutes, which is a story that people might remember. There was a famous photo of you, and we'll have it on the screen for people who are watching on video, of you at an event
course you will.
with then President Bill Clinton. It's a hilarious story, but you got to tell us. Yeah, tell us that story here for people because I'm sure a lot of people saw that picture, and they don't know the story of what happened behind it. Yeah, give it to us, please.
I was on a trip with the owner of Penthouse Magazine at the time, and I was with my girlfriend and his girlfriend, and we were in Monaco, the south of France, for a fundraiser. And there was a bunch of celebrities there, but Bill Clinton was there, and I was like so excited and enamored by him. Even if it was for 1 second, I was like, I gotta get a photo. My mom would love that. She was a big Democrat, so it's like, I've just gotta take a picture. So we asked him, and his bodyguards were like, sure, come on over. So we just took a picture, and then I don't know how many drinks I had in me, because the pose that I was doing was not appropriate, but it wasn't it wasn't anything too crazy either. And so my girlfriend, honestly, I think she sent it to her boyfriend who was in PR, and it went viral. And yeah, it was just like the talk of Monaco the entire time we were there. There was so much press around it. So many people reached out to do interviews. But then I was so upset, because although it got a lot of attention and I was doing something that was so fun, partying in the south of France, I just felt like, oh my gosh, people think that because I'm here taking a photo with him, that somehow that there's something sexual happening because I do adult. And it just really made me enraged. It made me so angry. So I just talk about that. But then from years to come, fans would bring that photo to get signed at conventions when I used to tour to do conventions.
Yeah, and he had no idea who you were. Didn't talk to you after that was over.
No,
it was literally just
at a party.
5
and I just
minutes.
wanted a photo, because it was the president of the United States of America. Who wouldn't want a photo with him?
Yeah.
I guess there's a few people that wouldn't want a photo with him.
Well, if they were a Republican, they wouldn't. But yeah, and so no, it's just a funny little kind of Forrest Gump moment, even though people were not very nice about it. But it's funnier now in retrospect, right?
It's
Tasha?
so funny. Who cares?
Yeah. All right. Well, so you.
And you know what? Can I just say something? That Monica Lewinsky has really made a comeback, and she's the best thing that could have come out of what I think was 2020, where she everybody started following her on Twitter, and she was just so demonized in my youth. And then now she's just this TED speaker, and people are like, yes, queen, you were the victim. And I just love Monica Lewinsky because of that.
Yeah. When it was,
and I just saw her yesterday, like in some article about her, I think it was her birthday yesterday. And I was like, yes, she's out of the shadows. Thank goodness. See, that's the times that we're living in.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a good point. And, and like, point. People saw why she was able to be an intern nowadays they can actually see what qualified her to get to that point.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And it's like her whole narrative is completely different. Thank goodness to social media.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. She actually gets to tell her side of the story.
And everybody's on her side.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yep. Yeah. All right. Well, so let's see here. I'm just scrolling through my notes here. And all right, so you, one of the things that I guess the Clinton experience did. You have a quote from a writer named Lisa Wade about that experience, because you felt like you wrote that it kind of made you. The media reporting about you and who you were just really was so derogatory that
at the time.
At that time. Yeah. And so one of the things that you put in there was this quote from Lisa Wade and I'll have it on the screen, that says, "A patriarchal bargain is a decision to accept gender rules that disadvantage women in exchange for whatever power one can wrest from the system. It is an individual strategy designed to manipulate the system to one's best advantage, but one that leaves the system itself intact." So what was your
I feel like
I
personally feel like I don't think women should be shamed for making the patriarchal bargain. I think that that's just part of capitalism and patriarchy. And so, I see myself as a feminist, but I think a lot of feminists would say that it is not feminist to make the patriarchal bargain. But I would have to disagree, because that's the system that we were born into. And I think, taking advantage of what you can as a woman in this world should not be something that is shamed or looked down upon. That's like you're in this kind of trapped situation. And I mean, I can't remember exactly which chapter that correlated with, but I'm sure the content had something to do with whatever patriarchal bargain I had made. And my girlfriend brought it up, who's an escort, the other day. And she was talking about that. And she was saying, that she's well aware that that is something that she engages in, and that she's just fine with that she still, she still feels like what she does is, liberating, at least for her, and that she gets a lot of flack from a lot of people about it, just because she's not fighting for other people, or not dismantling the system by not engaging in it whatsoever. And it's just like, that's not fair to do either, So yeah, I guess just admitting that, I might have many things to say about the patriarchy, but at the end of the day, engage in it in order to benefit my life. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I guess maybe the distinction, and you tell me if this is part of your mental calculus, is that you make no judgment for women who do that, is maybe as long as they also make no judgment against others for doing that as well. Because I think that's where the Madonna whore thing is important, because I think that maybe it seems like that, yes, I mean, you look at some feminist writing, I mean, there's a divide between sex positive and sort of, I don't know, people who want to focus on women as being only the victims of the system.
Right. It's like they're basically doing the same thing that they are so against men doing, which is sexualizing women and saying that that's all that, you know, they are kind of worth. It's
No, they're condemning women's choices at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why, you know, I think a lot of younger, you know, women who have come along and think about these same topics, that you know, they are more positive about sex work, and
they are, and
more
they're
willing to defend and stand, and also include trans women as well.
Yeah, well, yeah, but I often feel like, I guess it's just LA is so progressive, and sometimes I feel like it just depends on who you're talking to, honestly. Politics are so complicated. But I do find that there are plenty of liberal, progressive women or people that identify as that who shame sex workers. And you're like, what? You know, for making the patriarchal bargain. It's a weird topic because
it's people living the way that they can. Like in a way that's comfortable for them. And why would you condemn that? But people do. You're right about that. They do. And
yeah, on both sides of politics. It is not one or the other. I would say both sides. But I play tennis, and so I'm surrounded by very conservative women at my country club. I feel, I know not everybody is, but like a lot of them are. I would, maybe even it's just 50-50, but I just feel like a lot of them are. And I'm surprised by how very supportive they are. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's really opened my eyes this year to like, I guess I never really talked about my career at tennis. I know this is so, we have got off topic, but I've never talked about it at tennis. And then my book came out, and everybody at my country club bought my book. All the 70-year-old women that I play tennis with, and they all read the book, and they're all into it, and they're like coming to the signings and talking about the book 24/7 on the courts. And it's just interesting because these are people that I judged before as people. I was like, oh, they, you know, I don't want to get into the nuances of my job with them. Turns out they're my biggest fans.
Yeah, well, and maybe that's because they knew you as a person first, and that could be what it was. Because like, totally. Yeah, because like, I mean, in my own experience, you know, when I was, and you know, and we had discussed this offline before, but like, you know, when I was born and raised as a fundamentalist Mormon, you know, I had this very, you know, extreme, you know, view that, you know,
fundamentalist view.
Yeah, like that women who engaged in sex work were, you know, horrible satanic temptresses. And then when I was in college, you know, I got to know somebody who was a stripper, and you know, and she was just a normal person. And she was smart and nice, in fact. Like, actually, so one of the smartest women that I had known at that school. And, you know, it didn't make me, like, that experience didn't make me completely rethink everything. But it was one of those things that kind of just stuck in the back of my mind. Yeah. That, because it was like, oh, well, my church was wrong about women like her. And,
fundamentalist, you know, anything. It's not great.
Yeah. So I'm guessing maybe that was the experience, perhaps, for some of those women. For you.
Maybe, but I honestly don't know, and I don't really, whatever it is, I'm not going to ask them about it. I appreciate them. They're my biggest supporters, and they're all so sweet and so nice, and they're coming to my book signing next month, and they're just like all about it. It's wild to me. It is wild. Mostly because of their age too. They're all like in their 70s. I'm like, what?
Yeah, that is funny. It's funny. It's fun though. Yeah. Well, okay, so, you know, as you write, you know, that you're, and then I guess you started doing, when you went back to doing some stripping now and again, once you got into porn as a feature performer.
I mean, not now
And
and again. It was every weekend consistently.
oh, okay. Well, yes, appreciate that correction.
No, it's okay. It was
And
just such a big part of my life. Like I hope that I didn't make it sound like it was casual. It was like every single weekend for what felt like almost a decade of my life. It's
now,
a long time.
did that get exhausting after a while?
Yeah,
Did
I'm
you get
tired
tired of
just
it?
saying it. Oh my God. When I think of the airport now, I'm like, it has to be a private jet. There is no way I'm going to LAX. I'm going to LAX in October to go to Canada to be on like some show for a website called ManyVids. And I'm literally in my mind like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get on an airplane? Because that is how I feel about the airport. It's just
Oh,
so
LAX
overwhelming.
is a terrible airport. Let's be honest.
Thank you. Let's be honest.
Yeah. Well, all right. So, and there's and you do talk about a lot of the that work that goes into being able to do this kind of performance on the regular. Whether it's sex or stripping or whatever, that that people may not always understand how much exercise and dieting and makeup and clothing it got expensive, I guess, right?
It's so expensive to be a sex worker. It really is. You could write off everything. You spend so much money on looks and upkeep. And I'm sure there's a way to do that on a budget, but living in LA, everything is so expensive. And, you get booked more if you look a certain way, part of the bargain. So it's
Mm-hmm.
just very expensive.
Yeah. Okay. And so I guess, but there's definitely some, yeah, as we kind of briefly touched on a second ago, that some unsavory aspects of all of the adult industry. There's a passage in here that I'm going to read that I thought was well written about that you say that when you're a female performer in adult film, you are constantly attacked and put down by news outlets and society. In order to cope with this immense judgment, you become defensive. So defensive that you overlook issues that are happening to you for fear of perpetuating unfair stigmas and stereotypes. If there was more room for nuance and less judgment, the pressure to maintain that facade wouldn't be so overwhelming.
That is so eloquent. Oh my God. Amazing.
So you do talk in the book about, some of the more, unsavory things that do happen in the industry and how you had spoken out against them, like sexual harassment and other even worse things that you had become aware of. And people can read more of those details because, in your own experience, it's traumatizing and you don't have to re-traumatize yourself. So, but the thing you took away from it though was the importance of consent and getting people to understand that better in their own, as it applies to them individually. And that was how you kind of became more of a public advocate for that. And tell us maybe about how you began doing that and what you're doing with that now.
Sure. So I have been lucky enough to be a speaker at a bunch of different institutions, from Chapman University to UCLA. And I met a fraternity brother while I was speaking at one of my UCLA engagements who invited me to his fraternity house so that I could talk to the new pledges about sex and about consent, some of the topics I was talking about in the class at UCLA about. And so he basically recruited me, and I voluntarily came over to the house, and we did a seminar session with all of the pledges about how to negotiate boundaries and sex and how to ask for permission from the women that they would be engaging with at these fraternity parties that are oftentimes full of alcohol and drugs and all sorts of kind of just illegal and chaotic things. And so I went and we had a conversation, and it was eye-opening because I was like, oh my gosh, all these people, these men want to know about consent and it matters to them. And so I was able to go to fraternities from UC Santa Barbara to UC Davis and Riverside and all over the place to speak on behalf of advocating for consent and for asking permission when you engage in sex. And I think it was really empowering and important, and it was awesome. It was like an incredible few years of my life. Like, I loved doing it. And then it kind of took off, and I had a friend, Michael Ellsberg, who is a writer, and he's just an amazing guy, and he cares a lot about consent as well. And so he wanted to team up and to go talk nationally about consent to fraternity brothers. It was just such a kind of a great thing that I was doing, and he wanted to be part of it. And when it got down to the nitty-gritty of it all and organizing those talks, he wanted to charge for his services and also have me profit in some way for my time, because I shouldn't just be doing volunteer work up and down,
across the country.
I was going to say the coast, but no, I was already doing volunteer work up and down the coast. I didn't want to continue to do that across the country. It was taking up all my time. And the Interfraternity Council did not approve of the budget. They were like, you've been doing this for free. Why are we going to pay you now? Which taught me a lesson in economics. You have to charge from the beginning. And also, when I started to get a lot of press around it, like a full interview on CNN, the Interfraternity Council was also triggered because they were like, we don't want to be associated with a porn star. I'm like, what are you talking about? I make you look great. So we put an end to that, and it was kind of devastating because I continued to get text messages from fraternity presidents. I wouldn't even say what colleges, but they would be like, will you come talk to the pledges? And I'm like, nope, can't do it anymore. So I stopped doing that, but consent has a special place in my heart, and it is, to me, the foundation, the most fundamental part about sex. And that's like, saying that it almost feels silly because it's like, of course it is. Like, why would it not be? But I just feel like it's not talked about. It is not talked about enough. It's not.
Yeah.
So it's lovely to be able to talk about the things I've gone through in the adult industry and to make some sort of a change. And in the book, I mentioned how, at least I think I mentioned how I went back to set years later after I experienced unsavory things in the business. And there was like all this consent paperwork, and the conversation was really thorough, and it was like a completely different world I walked into. I was like, what? Oh my gosh. It made a difference. And obviously I can't take credit for everything, all the good changes in the business. I am just one of the many, many voices. But
who did speak out, yeah.
Yeah, it was so lovely to see that change and to feel
but you did
like
kind of help
really
get it started. I think don't sell yourself short.
I'm not selling myself short. I just want everybody to know that I realize many women speaking up made a difference.
Yeah. Well, all right. And then I guess the other thing that's kind of reconfiguring porn now, and you mentioned it at the front of this conversation, is OnlyFans. And it has really been kind of a liberating thing for a lot of people. And, whether that's, women who might not have wanted to have to go and move out to Southern California to do porn, or for whatever reason.
So expensive to live here.
Yeah, or like people who wanted to do trans modeling, but they couldn't find anyone who would pay for them in the industry. But now they actually have people who wanted to see their things, and now they can, and they can have a lifestyle off of it, and not have to be living in more risky situations for themselves. So it's been beneficial, and it's also I think. And maybe we can talk about it, like, for you and your fans. Like, has it helped them have a better relationship with you? You've had fans for a number of years. You call them reindeers. That's what they call themselves, right? And that you would, has the relationship between you and your fans changed as well? Like, maybe let's talk about that.
Sure, yeah. OnlyFans changed the landscape of adult entertainment and I think entertainment in general when it came out, and especially, and I just like to focus on this because I don't hear other people talking about it, but COVID, COVID mixed with OnlyFans created the normalization of sex work. It really did. Like I was waiting for the moment my whole life, and then in 2020 it just seemed like creators from all walks of life, all different types of backgrounds, were creating content and putting it on OnlyFans. And by using their mainstream brands, they kind of made it so that adult was just another form of entertainment. And then OnlyFans took off in a way where not only was everybody using it, but so many people were creating on there. And so it just like kind of all got mashed together, and now people talk about OnlyFans like it's an accounting job, like it's just everybody's on OnlyFans. And I know I'm speaking in a dramatic manner because I'm sure not everybody would agree with me, but I feel like from coming from 2010 to present day, it really is like a day and night transformation. Like sex work and porn, I'll use the word porn. Porn was something that was kind of hidden and taboo and still is. But then OnlyFans came along and just kind of made it really, really common. Like it's just, I feel, at least living in LA especially, you just feel it in a way that I don't know if other states can appreciate. And it's amazing for me. I feel like I can just be more authentic, and that other people that like want to be on OnlyFans can also be authentic and be themselves and not as judged. And so I love it. And I think I know it's a lot safer because, you know, you can create and make money from home and you never have to go to some set where you don't know people, but you could still do that if you want. You just don't have to make money off of film on, you know, with your body.
Yeah. Well, and it's not even only about sex either. Like that's the other thing is that, you know, a lot of people who are on OnlyFans, like they just
want to chat.
They just talk to their subscribers.
Yes. My fans are like my friends on OnlyFans, and I like talk to them. We have conversations all the time. I know them by name. I'm able to invite them out to events. Like it just creates this intimacy that we never had before.
Yeah, and like I think that's part of what the mainstreaming aspect is, though. That, you know, because like a lot of people who were performing in other areas of entertainment, so like comedy or acting or whatever, you know, like all those things were shut down during the pandemic, and so people, you know, were coming in and doing, you know, some porn and whatnot. But the other thing is that the people who were doing porn, like you actually your fans got to see, you know, you as a person more than just as, you know, somebody who they watch for like 6 or 7 minutes.
I think that's definitely true, but I think that men love amateur content because they think or feel like you're their girlfriend or their wife or their significant other or whatever, because
you're reminding them of the person they know.
A lot of people, I think, don't have a partner. And so they're on there. I'm not saying exclusively, of course, there's people who have a partner and they're using OnlyFans, but there's a lot of people that their only intimacy comes from adult performers. And so it's like you're on there and you're taking these candid shots of you in your bathroom mirror. And it's like, who does that except for a girlfriend?
Yeah, well, and what, like it's maybe to some degree helping them get, if they had never had any type of relationship,
definitely
at least have some modeling for this is how you need to treat somebody with respect if you want to be with them.
Well, I was going to say that.
And the whole thing is consent-based. Like the whole model is consent-based. Sure. Like they can't order you to do things that you don't want to do.
I mean, sure, but I wouldn't. I mean, they say things all the time that I'm only tolerate because I'm being paid. But for me, I just deeply feel like sex work is such a form of, in a way, like, I can't think of another word. Charity isn't going to make sense because we're paid, but it is a very similar effect to charity work because people reap benefits that go so far beyond just like, oh, this person, you know, was paid to make them feel good. Like, we as performers meet fans that are like, this is it for them. This is the relationship that they have with women. And I mean, whether that's good or bad, people can like discuss that, but I think it's amazing because otherwise, what would they do? They would have nobody. It's lonely. Life can be lonely.
Yeah, and it's better to have somebody
it's a service
than nobody. That's what you're saying?
I think so. I think it's a human need to have sex, to get off, and to feel like you have a companion. And even if you're paying for that service, you're still reaping some sort of benefit. And it is not the same as, you know, having somebody in real life. But you are still getting some form of intimacy and happiness and joy and love and interaction. And I think it's so deeply important. It really is. I can't remember what article this was, but it was like this whole deep dive into the personality traits of a sex worker and how usually a sex worker would be somebody that's normally like a nurse. Like if they weren't a sex worker, they would be a nurse or a babysitter, because we're like literally doing those things. We're just helping people.
All right. Well,
and I think that makes sense.
Yeah. And it's something that, you know, for people who do, you know, go off and say horrible things about sex workers like Jordan Peterson or whatever, like they're harming their own people who like them when they say things like that. I
mean, it's just not coming from a kind place, and for that they should be ashamed of themselves.
Yeah, I agree. All right. Well, so it's been a good conversation, Tasha.
Oh my gosh, so fun.
Put the book up on the screen here. So it's From Princess to Porn Star, a Real-Life Cinderella Story. And you are also on Instagram at Tasha Reign's Life. So it's been great having you here.
I had so much fun talking to you, Matt.
All right. So that is the program for today. I appreciate everybody for joining me. And if you want to get more episodes, just go to theoryofchange.show, where you can get video, audio, and transcripts of every episode. Thanks very much for those who are paid subscribers. You get complete access to everything. So I encourage everybody to do that. And if you are able to share the program or a particular episode that you liked with your friends or family or on social media, I definitely appreciate that as well. And anybody that's leaving nice written reviews on iTunes, that is very much appreciated as well. People, the written reviews, even more than the stars, are influential as I understand it. So I do appreciate everybody for filling those out. Thank you very much. And I'll see you next time.